and I was looking to spread my $100 across your portfolio of 100 trends, what would I be spending on the top 20? Like $50, $60? Like I would really be putting heavy investment in the top part of that list, and rightfully so. Those are the things that are going to drive growth and efficiency in my business. But the risk taker in me is going to reserve $5, $10 for some sprinkling across the bottom 20.
Welcome to What If, So What, the podcast where we explore what's possible with digital and discover how to make it real in your business. I'm your host, Jim Hertzfeld, and we get shit done by asking digital leaders the right questions. What if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. We have a really special episode today, and we're actually picking up an old conversation with Mike Kosiek. Mike, excited to have you again, and tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what brought you to this conversation.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me back. I do feel like there was a little bit of unfinished business. As we previewed a little bit during that webinar back in January, that we had a few topics we had to talk about. So I'm glad we get to do that today. My day job, I am a technology product director at a Fortune 100 retailer, and I have the pleasure of getting to help lead a small team that's focused on what I call product incubation. So really working at the intersection of real business need and emerging tech. And I think that's maybe what excited me about the opportunity to come and finish off this part of the conversation on digital trends in 2024. And you kind of also asked what prepared me for this. And I haven't really shared this, but the idea of this relationship between what if and so what, the title of your show, is kind of the way that I've approached the last handful of years in my career, and really tried to build credibility through this idea of how do you dream big and then make it real for people, especially leaders in your organization. And I even think back to my days of studying engineering in undergrad. And I was a mechanical engineering major. And I just always just sort of had that mindset. So I'm excited to be able to do that on things that are certainly on people's minds, maybe not their roadmaps for 2024, but certainly on their minds, and looking forward to the discussion.
Oh, the engineering mindset, blessing and curse. I'm a double E, Mike, in case.
Okay, there you go. We used to be friends at one point.
yeah. Well, I think mechanicals and electricals were sort of rivals.
Rivals maybe is the point.
At one point, like friendly rivals. But you said kind of like looking for real business, and then I think that's kind of what brought us here, because in that webinar that we did back in January, we examined some of the research that we did at the end of last year to prepare for 2024 to figure out what trends were, what digital capabilities are, floating to the top. And it's always great to look what's at the bottom. And one of the things that we found, and we were a little surprised by, were, some of these emerging, maybe unproven technologies, not necessarily even new. They're not necessarily emerging, but they really kind of floated to the bottom. And we had some theories about that, but we didn't really have time to get into it in the webinar. So I guess I'm really, really glad you're back here to talk about it. So we're going to attack those today. I don't know if we're going to justify the research or validate it, but we're definitely going to try and make sense of it. So things that kind of got to the bottom of that list, that doesn't mean they're no good. It just means that they weren't the top of many organizations' lists.
Maybe if I could just offer a point of view on that. And the list, I think, shakes out exactly what you would expect. Like the things that are most important to especially CDOs and CTOs and where their money is going were the things that were probably showing up in your top 10 or 20. And the more speculative trends are the ones that are showing up at the bottom. And, if I was a betting person and I was looking to spread my $100 across your portfolio of 100 trends, what would I be spending on the top 20? Like $50, $60? Like I would really be putting heavy investment in the top part of that list, and rightfully so. Those are the things that are going to drive growth and efficiency in my business. But the risk taker in me is going to reserve $5, $10 for some sprinkling across the bottom 20. And a lot of that is maybe placing strategic bets, taking some long shots. It's the difference, though, in business is that you have to have a little bit of action on those bets to see them through. It's not like just throwing something on 100 to 1 horse and seeing if it wins, and that's the action. You have to be committed to at least some level of learning. And I think maybe this conversation is the start of that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike. And that actually goes back to an earlier episode we did with Isaiah Engel around his book called The Innovation Casino. I don't know if you had a chance to catch that.
I did, yeah. It's a great episode.
some similar concepts. And I know we have an approach we call Now, New, Next, which sounds like a timeline, but it's kind of the same thing, built on the portfolio analysis of those investments. So like you said, 20%, this is the here and now, it's table stakes, it's parity. Now maybe around, 20%, something that's maybe some are doing, and then that 10%, which is real innovation. You really have to do all of it, right? You have to, if you don't prepare now for disruptive innovations and you only focus on the sustainable innovations to kind of put a innovator's dilemma lens on it, you're going to miss out. So it's getting that balance right. So I'm glad you brought that up. And, like any research, I think Mark Twain said it, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. So the way we're going to do this, we have opinions, we have perspectives. I don't know if we're going to agree or disagree on some of these. That's where the sparks will fly. And we're going to call it the rundown. So I'm going to call out a technology or a concept, and we'll take turns kind of on the what if and the so what. So we'll talk about what it is, maybe what's the excitement, what's the hope, and maybe we'll ground it a little bit. Like, so what makes it cool and what makes it kind of compelling. So Mike, you ready? You ready for
I'm
it?
ready. Bring it on.
Without further ado. All right. First on the list, and I think these do require a little definition. I'll start with digital twin. And I brought it up to somebody and they said, is that an electronica band? They thought it was a band, digital twin. It would be a great name for a band if you're an electronica band, maybe a house, DJ, we could be digital twins. But that's not what a digital twin is about, having a digital version of something physical and something in reality, right? So I think the simple example of a digital twin might be my car, right? So my car is wired up. On the dashboard, I can see the oil temperature. I can see the tire pressure. It's presenting me. It's, and a lot of, without having to go around with gauges, I'm on my dashboard. I'm seeing, sort of witnessing a digital twin of my car. Not necessarily how fast I'm going, but what's the engine doing? What's the temperature? What's the tire pressure? What's the lifespan of my cabin air filter? And, I think what's interesting about that, what if is like, what if I extended that to anything in the physical world? I could be not in my car. I could be 1,000 miles away, and I have a digital version I can look at. I can see from anywhere on my mobile phone, at some command. I always think of like a command center, mission control. I can see the digital version of some physical something somewhere. And why is that exciting? Well, I don't have to be there. I don't have to be 1,000 miles away. I can be in the comfort of my home. So lots of possibilities. Mike, why don't you jump on that? What's your version of a digital twin?
The one piece, and I actually had this conversation recently with someone in the data science space. The piece for me that's maybe missing for the definition that I personally agree belongs there is the real-time nature of the model that you're thinking of. And you'll talk to folks, say maybe in like supply chain, and they'll say, well, we have a digital twin of our network. It's a simulation that we run, and we can change what if scenarios, and it will tell us what the outcome is. But to me, that is a simulation model. And the power of a digital twin is the infusion of IoT within that physical environment or that physical thing to actually recreate what's going on, in a remote environment. And I think probably the best example that I've seen, at least in my sector, is Lowe's they've been working with NVIDIA publicly through NVIDIA's Omniverse to create a 3D representation of the store that uses all their RFID and computer vision tech to actually show business leaders, this is what's happening in the store. This is where product is, this is where customers are, this is what employees are doing. It's incredibly powerful to lower the kind of the barrier of entry for understanding operations in your business if you can represent it visually and in real time without having to A, put someone on the ground, or B, help them understand how to interpret, rows and rows of a spreadsheet. I think the thing that makes it really challenging to pull off is capturing good, clean, relevant data, which usually requires an investment in a pretty, like I said, deep IoT array to actually gather it. And that's probably the thing that holds most organizations back from truly getting to this.
No, I love that angle. What makes it different and compelling is it's real time.
Yeah.
Right. And that's great. I think you're right. We kind of jumped over that. Like what makes digital twin possible aside from the sort of telemetry or distance factor is, the sensing, right? How many sensors? And I know I talked to a lot of manufacturers who, I use it. I love using car examples. There's two
Hmm.
metaphors I love to use: cars and picnics. Like try it out. Like if you're trying to create a metaphor, like I'm planning the picnic, I'm running the picnic.
Oh man, what's going
No,
to be my metaphor? I feel like I need a personal metaphor that's just my go-to. Great suggestion.
well, we'll work on it. Maybe it'll come to you by the end of this
Okay. All
episode.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a great idea. Like the real time nature of it, and you're right. It's enabled by sensor technology, which is everywhere, right?
Yeah.
IoT sensors. I was just reading about, there's more protocols coming out that are driving shop floor automation, warehouse automation. You mentioned the store. I know another application we hear a lot is something we call digital oil field. You're mining or you're running a solar array,
Hmm.
and there's, again, spread out over miles and it's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, that idea of like not just distance, but what's happening now, right? The simulation thing will come up later. I know that's going to come up, but let's go on to another one, which is might be related to this. Like these next two, I think, are quite related, and that is augmented reality. Mike, why don't you start? Like, give me your take on augmented reality.
It's probably, like you said, we probably need to start with the definition. So if you
Yeah,
want to situate augmented reality among the R's, augmented reality being strictly
yeah,
the overlaying of digital content in the physical world. Virtual reality, the second R, would be the simulation or the substitution of your world with a digital world. So think of immersion to the extreme. And then you have mixed reality, which is the recreation of your physical world in an immersive
wow,
environment so that you can overlay digital content. And those things
that's a
often are
breakdown.
used. Yeah, it is, and often you can just
And
call it extended reality is all three. But it's important because when you're talking about augmented reality, this is the one that is, I'll say the most attainable and the most here and now. In fact,
mhm.
we probably have a lot of people listening have used things, through their phone to be able to, like I said, bring digital content into the physical world. My favorite story is last year. My wife and I are looking to buy a new sofa for the family room, and said, "Well, we gotta get a babysitter so the kids can stay at home, so we can go to Crate and Barrel and sit on this sofa." And I said, I wonder if they have like a home AR experience. And I pulled it up, and I'll be honest, it was one of the best ones that I had seen in terms of capturing the physics and lighting and dimension of the sofa. I placed it right on top of our current one, said it looked great. I got out of a trip to Crate and Barrel. But it was a really great representation of the power right now
Yeah,
of how overlaying digital content can change the customer experience. And so I guess my take is, what if there's an entire realm of data that you can choose to opt into if you have the right hardware that doesn't have to hinder the rest of our life? And we are just starting to tap into that. And I'll offer maybe another point. AR was really prevalent in the wearable space at CES this year as far as AR eyewear. And I think kind of where that is at, we are probably still 3 to 4 years, if you read some of the tea leaves, out from having
yeah,
truly sort of overlaid wearables. I love the Meta smart glasses that came out at the end of last year. And while they are not augmented reality, they are sort of a precursor for this idea of how do you convince people to wear technology in a way that
yeah.
could augment their experience in the future. And while this does not have visual overlays, the ability to use camera and artificial intelligence to augment the way that I live my life with technology. And I'm not exaggerating. There's some game changing devices out there. And so this one gets me truly excited for what's coming in the next couple of years. And I don't think we have to try too hard to make something of it.
Yeah, I agree. I think I love your definition and breakdown of augmented or the various realities. And this one, I feel I agree. I think it's the most tangible to me. That's why I think it has the most success. I love your story. Now, if we can augment like the feeling of the cushion, like I can imagine in my head what that looks like and how that would function. We can take that to your lab. But I think that's the most tangible for people. There's just it's you mentioned the time saving. Again, we're overlaying simulation. We're overlaying connected devices. But I think just the physical, the way we operate. You just think about people. Like I was working out this morning, and I have my my watch on, my Apple Watch, and I was like, well, wait a minute. It's actually, when you break it down, it's a bit of augmented reality. Maybe it's a bit of digital twin, but if I could just use the glass to do that in a hands-free kind of a way, it's a little bit of a cyber extension.
Yeah, there's an element of ambient computing there,
Yeah,
which I think
yeah.
is maybe what you're getting at. Is augmented reality is sort of the next step of, there's a visual component to it, but this idea of ambience in our life,
Yeah.
of just technology,
Yeah.
if it works well enough, should really sort of move to the background. And I think
Yes.
maybe it's a good
Yeah.
segue into Metaverse, which is the opposite end of the spectrum, which is asking you to leave your physical world and
Yeah.
come enter something else, which I love this topic too, but I love it for a completely different reason. I'm curious where you're at. I don't know if you're a metaverse bull or a metaverse bear.
What's in between? I'm a little neutral on it. I'm probably a little more bearish on it. My gauge is just, where we see, and we have a pretty diverse set of clients and where we see some of the adoption taking place. But aside from the research that we did, Metaverse, to me, I go back to, the gaming world and the Second Life and the Sim. That I'm still stuck in that. Maybe that's part of my problem. But again, this convergence of a digital twin with augmented reality and Metaverse, now that might be a pretty cool place to be. And I think that's where I see some really clear applications, training applications, like the first ones that come to mind. I'm training for physical events, maybe a presentation, a tour. I'm planning my vacation. I'm planning my hike. But, really more grounded applications, like I have to go to a dangerous location, or I have to simulate a rescue or some adverse event. So those are some real life scenarios that we've encountered, that we're hearing about, some applications. There's a sense of urgency. Sometimes I think, hey, that's a great play. That's a great way to get started and then, learn about it, right? Mm-hmm. That's in real terms. So, I think, are people going to exist and live in the metaverse? Are they going to wake up and look out the window and then opt into the metaverse for the day? I hope not. But aren't we kind of doing that anyway on social media? Maybe. But, I think there's some really interesting direct applications. I guess that's how I'm a little bearish on Metaverse being this new place. I'm listening to myself and I'm thinking, God, I sound out of touch, but I don't know. Maybe there's a better application out there.
I don't think you're out of touch. And I think we probably sit in the same spot. There's just a distinct difference when you say the word metaverse. Some things have happened in the media that have created a lot of obfuscation of this. So first of all, it's just the difference between big M and little m metaverse. Like if you're talking about Ready Player One, where exactly what you said, you wake up, you throw the headset on, you leave, that's big M metaverse. But when you talk about little m metaverse and the idea of creating a sense of place, presence, and location in the digital world in a way that you can't do through a mobile device, you just rattle off 5 or 6 of them. There's a ton of application of where that's really important. And so I too look at, and you kind of seen a departure of the word metaverse, and maybe we just say immersive now to sort of get across this idea of how do you give people that sense of presence and location when they need it. And I think there's plenty of applications that are there for it. But the number of times that people, look and call metaverse meta, or call a VR video game the metaverse, there's a lot of confusion on what, and I'm not blaming Zuck for this, but they're different things. And that company is right now, it's a products company that's churning out VR technology.
Well, I like the big M, small m distinction. So I think it's a great way of looking at it. So let's jump out of digital twin, augmented reality, the realities, the metaverse, pretty tightly related. We're going to kind of shift into a couple other things we saw that are really all built around blockchain. There's one that
want to have a whole show on this one.
That's a whole other metaverse we could get into. But let's start with blockchain. Gosh, maybe you want to, I've tried out a definition of blockchain with family members, and I don't know if it's going to fly with you.
Here's my definition. Right. Here's how I love this topic because, at its heart, blockchain is a infrastructure technology. That's what it does. It's a way to store data, which means just like we've always made decisions around Do I use SQL or NoSQL or relational or unstructured? Now I have to decide if I use decentralized. It's another infrastructure technology, but it is wrapped in this sort of Web3 mania where we have this altruistic belief that data ownership should be taken back from the man and decentralized across its owners, the people, and we're going to revolt against big tech owning our digital lives. Like it's hard to remove the technology from this belief that there's some, like I said, some higher purpose.
Is it big tech? Is it the government? Is it the Illuminati? I don't know. It's this nebulous sort of bad guy. That's why this is an interesting topic, because I'm with you. I think blockchain is the way I've explained it to my family members is it's very similar. Of course, when you talk about infrastructure to somebody, they're thinking roads and bridges, and we're thinking data centers. But it's like, you take something, instead of putting it all in one place, I break it up. Like I spread it out, but we all have this. But blockchain manages the agreement between the people who own the parts of it to work together. That's kind of now that's also pretty abstract,
very much so.
But so it's a hard one, and then the sort of security element of it comes in. It becomes more secure that way. Oh, you don't have all your eggs in one basket, and then people again go to this sort of somehow, because everything becomes politics. Then I can hide things, and it's what enables the dark web. Like there's all kinds of stuff around this one. But I think there's some real applications here, right? That I think come from, the distributed nature of it gives it to me is not just the security, but there's a resilience around blockchain. I don't have to, how did you make sure that server, there was a problem, the whole thing didn't collapse? Well, you took the data and you just broke it up a couple of hard drives. Now it's in the same box, There's an advantage to that. If you can explain that, like, hey, if I have electricity coming in to my house from the utility, but if something bad happens, I have a generator that kicks in. That concept, the idea of resilience and the security that comes with that, to me, is the best use case for blockchain.
The place where I find it to be most applicable is where you have data that is constantly changing, that is sort of changing hands, changing parties, or you have a number of parties that are involved in the same ecosystem. So think about supply chains. And then if you look at the sector of luxury goods, where you have to deal with counterfeiting and inauthenticity. This idea that something was made in, a handbag is made in France, and it's going to make it all the way to an owner or a second owner or a third owner that's now in Brazil.
Yeah.
The ability to see that in a way where there is proof and buy-in that is truly an authentic product. So a lot of those, there are, in the other one, you could argue is digital identity has, even like the United Nations came out a number of years ago and said, we believe that digital identity in 2030 is based in blockchain and it's not controlled by centralized governments. And we're going to have the ability to, grant durable identities to people in, refugees in third world countries where we don't have these services.
Yeah.
There is a lot of good that can come from this idea that the infrastructure is not tied through a central authority. And those are the types where I think we're making headway. And for most people, they're not going to realize that it's blockchain behind the scenes. I think where you get a little, you get a little skittish, which is like trying to force your everyday business challenges onto the blockchain because it sounds cool, like trying to put your customer data on the blockchain. We're not ready for that. I'm not sure we're ever ready for that.
It seems like one of those techs that got it was, of course, crypto, which is kind of
we could
probably on the list. A lot of crypto built on blockchain networks and made it scary. The man versus the criminal, the dark web. But I feel like the blockchain just continues anyway, because this idea of resilience, it's going to happen. It's an infrastructure that has to happen. It's going to happen, and probably needs to be higher on this list. Like I would say, blockchain is not in your infrastructure strategy. At
least developing an understanding of where it might support your business and where it doesn't. So you kind of dovetailed though. Do you hold crypto?
I dabbled in the moment when it peaked and got out before it kind of cratered.
It's re-peaked.
Yeah. I don't think it's going anywhere either. So I think it's early stage. I'll admit I need to spend a little more time. I was in the experimentation stage. The joke about crypto bros, I know a couple. They were crypto rich for like a hot minute. But again, I think the underlying concept is around blockchain is solid. I know we were going to talk next unrelated is NFTs, non-fungible tokens, one of those great names. Not quite the cool band name of digital twin, but I don't know, maybe it'll stick. So just related to that, again, another blockchain application.
I'll start with crypto. Yeah. Another example of sort of carrying forward that altruistic belief that decentralizing currency is important for humanity. And maybe it is. We've seen some people got very rich off of it. Some people did some very illegal things around the space that's not unique to crypto, but I think the unregulated nature of it right now is certainly creating more space for that. The problem that I have right now with crypto and why I would say most organizations, either ones that I've worked in or talked to, there really isn't a need to be getting into this space. A highly volatile, speculative asset that doesn't really belong on the balance sheet, and customers aren't really asking to transact with it. And I think we're probably some time out or continue to see it be very niche. Like we'll talk about NFTs, like you can't buy NFTs unless you have crypto. They're sort of married up. And the biggest problem for me is right now the crypto customer experience as you purchase some is really confusing. And there's like an adage around personal finance that if you can't understand it, it's probably a scam. And I'm not saying that crypto is a scam, but like the way that the relationship between a digital wallet and these very odd know your customer regimens, it doesn't feel natural. And so it scares people away. It drives volatility. And I think we got to let that settle out.
Yeah, I would agree. And you just put the whole financial services sector under speculation. Nobody understands. I mean, explain, we're going to go credit default swaps. Like nobody, that was, let's go back to 2008, right?
If you've seen the movie The Big Short, I mean, that probably went a long way to explaining the
Big Short. I described that. Okay. Pop culture reference. It was like regulators scamming bankers who were scamming hedge fund managers who were scamming regulators who were scamming bankers. It was so good. So well done. Let's save that one. I'd love that. There's more. And I would love to ask those listening, like, what else do we need to look at? What else is out there? Mike, maybe we can get back together again. We can take that collection. Because as we prepared for that research, as you start to look at emerging technologies, the nature of an emerging technology is you don't know what it is. Like that's what makes it emerging. So I think just seeing what's out there, I'd love to see what else you guys are looking at. I feel like we're halfway through the year already. It's time to start thinking again about what's out there. The pace of change is faster than ever. So maybe we can do this again, Mike.
Anytime.
Yeah, great. Again, for those listening, we'll open it up. We'll leave some show notes. If there's an emerging tech or something else you want the scrutiny from Mike and me, we'll give it. We won't hold back. And we hope to hear from you. And Mike, I hope to do this again soon.
Thanks for having me, Jim. It's super fun. Great conversation.
Mike.
You've been listening to What If, So What, a digital strategy podcast from Perficient with Jim Hertzfeld. We want to thank our Perficient colleagues J.D. Norman and Rick Bauer for our music. Subscribe to the podcast and don't miss a single episode. You can find this season along with show notes at perficient.com. Thanks for listening.